So as we know, back in March, Tesla announced the Model Y, and then in November, they announced the Cybertruck. So the Model Y is basically just a slightly bigger Model 3, and you can check out my full comparison of those two cars in the link up here or in the description below. But basically, the Model Y is a little more expensive, a little bigger, and it gets a little bit less range and a little bit less performance, as is to be expected by a bigger vehicle. Now, the Cybertruck, on the other hand, looks like nothing we've ever seen before. It looks like no car on the road, and that's why people either love it or hate it. And yes, there's a complete breakdown in the description below as well. Now, since the Cybertruck is being built with what Tesla is calling the exoskeleton, where they're not building it with the traditional frame and then body design, they're actually able to save on quite a bit of costs and get these prices to be fairly similar to the Model Y. And sometimes the specs are actually better, so let's compare the two. Since the prices and specs are fairly similar, this has actually caused quite a few people who were planning on getting the Model Y to change their mind and get a Cybertruck. Now, it's important to keep in mind this is a giant truck compared to a crossover SUV, so they're going to be completely different in size. And for me, I don't need a big giant truck, so I'm sticking with the Model Y, but here's a comparison. So the Cybertruck uses this exoskeleton design, and basically it uses 30 times cold rolled stainless steel on the body, and that prevents damage, dents, it's bulletproof, and then they use Tesla armor glass on the actual glass windows, and it's supposed to be super strong and prevent ball bearings from breaking it, even though it actually broke it at the event. Apparently in the future, it's gonna prevent any of these damages. And then the Model Y is just a normal car, but it's electric, and it looks really awesome, it looks really great, but it's a normal car, it's a normal build, no bulletproofing, and no crazy Tesla armor glass there. Regarding safety, we know in the Model Y that Elon said they expect 5 stars in every category, which is what they have on the Model 3, and it's a very similar design, so it's very likely to happen there. But for the Cybertruck, they actually haven't said anything regarding safety, so we don't know what's going to happen. But safety is a huge priority for Tesla, so it's probably going to be the case that it's going to be very safe, but we're yet to see what's going to happen there. Now, the Model Y technically seats up to 7, but everyone thinks that those last 2 seats in the back third row are only for tiny children, and it looks like it based on all of the photos that it's not really going to fit 2 adults, so realistically it seats 5. And that's compared to the Cybertruck. The Cybertruck actually seats 6 people comfortably. And that's according to people who actually rode in the Cybertruck at the event. They say it's actually very roomy inside. So it seats 6 comfortably compared to the Model Y's 5, and maybe 7 if you have 2 really small people. So the Model Y has 66 cubic feet of cargo space, and that is thanks to this hatchback design with the lift gate that opens up to the big back there because it doesn't have a traditional trunk. And then you can also fold the seats flat and open it up for a lot more space there. And then for the Cybertruck, Tesla actually says it has 100 cubic feet of exterior cargo space. So that is the truck bed and presumably probably the frunk as well, but we haven't actually seen what the frunk looks like. And the cool thing with the truck bed of the Cybertruck is that it actually has a cover that kind of magically opens and closes. It rolls up into the truck itself, so it disappears completely, and then it closes, and they say it's actually locked and it's strong enough that you can stand on it. So it's a really strong truck bed and a really strong truck bed cover. So with the Model Y, you're looking at storage space on the inside of the car, versus the Cybertruck, it's technically still the outside, even though it's completely covered. Now the Cybertruck is expected to be 231.7 inches long, 79.8 inches wide, and 78 inches tall with that 6.5-foot truck bed. And it's also expected to weigh anywhere from 5,000 to 6,500 pounds. The Model Y, on the other hand, is supposed to be much smaller, and it's expected to be 187.9 inches long, 78.8 inches wide, and 62.9 inches tall. And that car is actually also expected to weigh about 4,078.5 pounds. So these numbers are not final, but it just really emphasizes the fact that the Cybertruck is way bigger and way heavier than the Model Y. On the Model Y, you're going to have fixed suspension, just like is on the Model 3. Compared to the Cybertruck, it actually uses what they're calling adaptive air suspension that allows you to raise or lower the suspension depending on what you're going for. So if you're off-roading, maybe you raise it all the way to the maximum 16 inches, or if you're going on the freeway and you want aerodynamics, you can lower it. The Model Y features the same exact 15-inch touchscreen as the Model 3, and you use that for all the main controls of the car. And the Cybertruck has a very similar design, one big horizontal touchscreen in the center console, but it actually is 17 inches. So if a very big touchscreen is really important to you, you get 2 inches more in the Cybertruck. Both of these cars feature a fully panoramic glass roof, and they have 4 doors, and they have a frunk for extra space in the front because there's no engine. And they also both come standard with autopilot, and then you can get the same full self-driving upgrade for $7,000 extra. So I'm brushing over a lot of the specifics of these cars because I have other videos where I go into those details, and those are all linked in the description below if you want to check those out. The single motor version of the Cybertruck begins production in late 2022, and that's a recent update. They actually flipped that around because I think they expected to get more orders of that initially, and it was going to be the first one released, and now it's actually the last one released. And then the dual motor and tri-motor are going to start production in late 2021. For the Model Y, on the other hand, the standard range version is going to start in 2021, but all the other trims are actually going to start summer of 2020 and possibly earlier. So the Cybertruck comes in 3 different trims: single motor, rear wheel drive, and then dual motor and tri-motor. Since there's no tri-motor version of the Model Y, it's kind of hard to compare these apples to apples, and there's actually 4 different trims for the Model Y, but I'll just compare them basically based on price and what specs are the most similar. So if we take the single motor rear wheel drive Cybertruck and compare it to the standard range version of the Model Y, here's what we get. So the single motor rear wheel drive Cybertruck starts at $39,900, and it gets a range of 250 plus miles, a 0 to 60 of 6.5 seconds, and a top speed that hasn't been announced yet. And in addition to this stuff, it actually has a tow capacity of 7,500 plus pounds. And then the standard range Model Y is expected to be about $40,000, and that one gets 230 miles of range, a 0 to 60 of 5.9 seconds, and a top speed of 120 miles per hour. As you can expect, there's no numbers on towing capacity for the Model Y. So comparing the two, the Model Y should be about $100 more expensive, and it gets 20 miles less range, but the 0 to 60 is about 0.6 seconds faster. And then just keep in mind, this is a giant truck compared with a crossover SUV. Next up is the dual motor all-wheel drive Cybertruck, and that starts at $49,900. It gets a range of 300 plus miles, a 0 to 60 of 4.5 seconds, and a top speed that hasn't been announced either yet on that. And then as well, it gets a towing capacity of 10,000 plus pounds. Now I could compare this to the long-range rear-wheel drive Model Y because that gets the same 300 miles of range, but it doesn't really make sense because it's not dual motor and the specs are just not at all similar except for the range. So instead, let's compare the all-wheel drive long-range Model Y. So that one starts at $52,000 and it gets a range of 280 miles. It's a 0 to 60 of 4.8 seconds, and then a top speed of 135 miles per hour. So comparing the two, the Model Y is about $2,100 more. It gets a range that's about 20 miles less, and a 0.3 seconds slower 0 to 60. So essentially the Cybertruck wins in this category. If you're comparing the two and you're torn between the two, and it actually makes sense for you to either have a truck or a crossover SUV, you might want to get the Cybertruck because it actually wins in all these categories. Alright, last up is the Tri-Motor Cybertruck. So this crawls close to the $70,000 mark with $69,900 as the starting price. But it gets a crazy range of 500 plus miles, a 0 to 60 of 2.9 seconds, and then of course a top speed that hasn't been announced. But on top of that, it gets a towing capacity of 14,000 plus pounds. Now this one is kind of tough to compare because there's not a Model Y that starts at a price very similar to that, but we can go ahead and compare it to the Model Y Performance, which is about $8,000 cheaper. So we have the Model Y Performance, which is the most expensive version of the Model Y, and that starts at $61,000, and it gets a range of 280 miles, a 0 to 60 of 3.5 seconds, and a top speed of 150 miles per hour. So in the Cybertruck, you're paying about $8,900 more, but you're getting a range of 500 plus miles, and that's 220 miles more, which is basically the full range of the Model Y standard range. So you're essentially getting the range of 2 electric cars in one, and that's pretty amazing at a 500 plus mile range. On top of that, you're getting a 0 to 60 that's 0.6 seconds faster down to 2.9 seconds, which is pretty amazing. And then you're just getting a much bigger car, a much larger truck in that case with a lot more storage capacity, and it has the adaptive air suspension and all the other features of the Cybertruck that I already mentioned. Basically, it doesn't really make sense to compare these cars, but the prices are fairly similar and the specs are fairly similar to the point where it actually might make sense for some people. If they're considering a truck versus an SUV, they can go with the Cybertruck. However, if you're like me and you don't really need or want a big pickup truck, then the Model Y might still make a lot of sense. I mean, the tri-motor version with 500 plus miles of range is pretty tempting, but that's getting close to $70,000 and definitely out of my price range. Also, keep in mind that the Cybertruck isn't beginning production until late 2021. Compared to the Model Y, it's actually going to be coming out in summer of 2020, if not a little earlier, and you can check out a video where I give all the updates about why it might possibly be coming earlier up here or in the description below. In the future, if the Cybertruck succeeds, I'm excited to see what Tesla can do with this exoskeleton design, because clearly they're able to get the price of the Cybertruck down to a lower cost because of this design. So maybe in the future, Tesla can take this design and apply it to a cyber car, maybe make a Model 3 sized car that uses this same exoskeleton, and maybe they can get it closer to $25,000. If the car itself is cheaper to produce, then they can focus their costs on the actual batteries themselves. And as battery production costs come down, and if they're able to make the actual body of the car cheaper like they're doing in the Cybertruck, it could be exciting and it could open up the possibility for more and more people to get electric cars at affordable prices. So if you're choosing between the Model Y and the Cybertruck, what are you going to end up getting? Let me know in the comments below. And even if you're not deciding, if you had to choose between the two, what would you get? I personally ordered the long-range rear-wheel drive version of the Model Y, and I can't wait to get it, so make sure you subscribe to this channel because I'm going to be bringing out regular updates about Tesla and the Model Y specifically, and then when I get that car, I'm going to be doing a lot more videos. And yeah, just make sure you subscribe to this channel so you can get notified about those. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one.